Okay, we're live on YouTube, just connecting Instagram. Yes, we're live on both platforms now. So we can start the live discussion, sir.
Please.
Good evening to everyone who's tuned in. Today's discussion will be on the theme of political upheaval in Nepal. Allow me to introduce our speaker for the evening to you. Professor S D Muni is Professor Emeritus at the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, and former ambassador and special envoy, Government of India. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Welcome. Thank you.
So today's discussion will be centered around your article for EPW. And to begin the discussion, it is probably essential to understand the historical context and the underlying factors that brought Nepal to such a precipitous boiling point, culminating in the Gen Z uprising. So, do the protests, in your view, reveal the deep structural challenges and fragmentations within Nepal's democracy?
Well, I think it's a long question because we can go deep into the history. I better would not. I would just start with the Republican system, which came to Nepal in 2006,
Yes.
replacing monarchy.
Hmm.
And they had then a new constitution in 2015, under
Yes.
which Republican system has been functioning since then. So
Yes.
these are the historical aspects which are more important.
Sure.
If anybody needs the details, we can always go into that. Secondly, the underlying factors were there at least were in a paramount way in economic field and in the political field.
Right.
Politically, what has happened is that there has been an instability. There is no government which has survived its full term in one way or the other, and there is a huge corruption.
Right.
Most of the reasons for instability is the political alliances which are based entirely on assuming power, grabbing power, and sustaining it.
Right.
Not even on ideology, not even on good governance, or not even on considerations for the people.
Hmm.
As a result, two, three main leaders have been changing their faces so far as prime minister's post is concerned, and the governments are changing on terms of coalition. It is surprising that they have had communist and Maoist coalition. They have communist and democratic coalition with Nepali Congress. They have a coalition between Maoist and the Nepali Congress, which is a democratic party, with all other smaller parties pulled in largely because of ministerial berths and all that.
Hmm.
This has led to frustration among people because no good governance and no real development has taken place. Uh,
Right.
though I think, in terms of period of monarchy, Nepal has registered some growth, which
Mm-hmm.
is much better, I think 3.4 or so. But
Mm-hmm.
it is not enough. And the kind of economic growth which has taken place has two specific aspects. One, it is very slow, inadequate, and secondly, it is unequal. There are some people who have gone very rich, the some people have been very poor. So this
Yes.
is how economy has suffered. The third aspect is, of course, demography.
Hmm.
And demographically, you would realize that Nepal has almost 42.5% of the young generations,
Right.
which is a huge force. And there is no employment. As a result, most of the people are migrating.
Mm-hmm.
According to one survey, almost 1,500 people migrate every day from
Right.
Nepal. And they go and seek jobs elsewhere in the world because they have no opportunities at home.
Right.
They send 33% of the GDP as remittances. As a result, the government has its own stakes in letting it go because it gives them kind of support and income. But this generation, which is young, which is aspiring, which
Hmm.
is very confident, is also highly technologically savvy. So they
Right.
have access to most of the gadgets, and they work very well with all these gadgets and all that. So I
Right.
think this is This is where the problem arises in terms of the context which is there. That youth had taken to social media in a big way. Then the government closed social media because government is not only what you call malgovernance, but there are also elements of autocratic behavior in
Right.
in chasing out the opponents, in controlling people's aspirations and all that. So
Mhm.
the Gen Z actually revolted against them. Gen Z did not want to change the constitution or change the system at all. Their attack initially has been largely on corruption and
Mhm.
changing the leadership. This is
Right.
where the protest came in for.
Right. And what were some of the political streams that emerged during these Gen Z protests? And why did the process of forming the interim government prove to be particularly difficult in this context?
Look, there were three main streams which emerged as
Hmm.
a result of the Gen Z revolt and whatever happened, the kind of devastation which took place in Nepal, particularly on the second day of the revolt.
Right.
One is Gen Z, of course. They came in a big way as a force. They
Mhm.
established their credibility for whatever else it was.
Yeah.
The second was the old establishment, which was thrown out, which did not want the system to change and which did not want to accept Gen Z in one way or the other. And
Mhm.
the third were the monarchists, because what happened was that in 2006, when monarchy was thrown out, 2008 constitutionally, but politically it was marginalized in 2006, they want to come back. And unfortunately, the failures of the republican system have been exploited by the monarchists, the royalists, to see if monarchy can stage comeback. So these
Right.
were the three main forces, and they had their own obvious conflicts. The royalists wanted monarchy to come back. The old establishment did not want to be disturbed. They wanted to remain in power as they have been doing. And the Gen Z wanted to change the leadership and the political culture, if I say so. But
Mhm.
then, the Gen Z movement itself got distorted. We must be very clear about it.
Mhm.
First day, there was a real, genuine Gen Z revolt, which was
Mhm.
peaceful, which had nothing to do with violence. We just
Mhm.
wanted to attack the corrupt leadership and the corrupt system. But
Yes.
then some provoked them. There was a police violence. Not only 19, more than 70 people died all over Nepal.
Yeah.
And that second day, most of the national buildings and assets were completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Private property was destroyed. Businesses were destroyed. Supreme Court was burned down. The
Mhm.
Central Secretariat was burned down. Prime ministers and presidents' official residences were burned down. So this happened, and there is a serious suspicion that there was a conspiracy behind it. The new prime minister who came, Sushila Karki, has said that there was a conspiracy, and the old prime minister has also said that there was a conspiracy, and it's not a genuine Gen Z revolt which has resulted in such a devastation and such a loss to the country.
Right. Uh, what are the contours of the agenda that have been set by the interim Prime Minister Karki and the implications of the same?
Well, Prime Minister Karki said specifically three agenda before her in order to continue. One, that and the most important was to hold elections for the new parliament within 6 months.
Yes.
Second was they bring to the book those people who are corrupt and who were indulging in malgovernance. That is some of the old leadership, and why this violence started, what kind of orders were given. And the third was to hold those people responsible who really brought about this destruction, which
Right.
means those who had entered into. This was the three agenda. But what has happened is that in the process of elections, there are new demands which are coming from Gen Z.
Hmm.
Number one demand is that they want not the elections for a parliament which will then elect the prime minister. They want elections directly for an executive. So they
Right.
want an executive prime minister or
Hmm.
an executive president, something like that. Uh,
Hmm.
and then they want people of Nepali diaspora spread
Hmm.
all over the world
Hmm.
as voters.
Yeah.
These two things make it very difficult, and I think so far Prime Minister Sushila Karki has avoided succumbing to them, though
Right.
she has been guided mostly by some of the Gen Z leaders, and there is a lot of criticism of the Sushila Karki government on that count also. And the
Hmm.
old establishment parties also are going to the court saying that Sushila Karki's appointment itself was illegal. It was
Hmm.
not within the constitutional parameters. So there are problems, and
Yeah.
the problems have become more compounded largely because of what you call a split and divisions within the Gen Z groups.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
the protest came, it appeared that Gen Z was very homogeneous. Now
Hmm.
it appears there are more than 20 groups which have their different voices, and
Right.
these are the developments which have come out after I wrote the article. So they probably are not in the article, but
Right.
this is a fact which has further complicated Sushila Karki's efforts to hold
Yeah.
elections within 6 months and also punish the real culprits. Even on real culprits, for example, those who have destroyed properties and all that, the Gen Z has said you can't take them into account at this stage. Let
Hmm.
the tribunal complete the work, because they fear that many of the Gen Z groups also indulged in that kind of
Hmm.
violence. In fact, one name of Mr. Balan, who is the mayor of the Kathmandu, he even before the Gen Z revolt has sent out messages saying that Singh Darbar should be burnt, the central secretariat should be burnt. So there are
Yes.
a lot of question marks which are hanging on in Nepali media, and let
Hmm.
us see how it emerges. We hope that Sushila Karki is able to carry out the elections within 6 months.
Yes. But indeed, it's a tough mandate.
Yeah, but the election commission has now announced the dates.
Yes.
Seems that they are ready to face the situation.
Yes. I think they will be held in March, if
Yes,
I'm not
5th of
wrong.
March. Yes.
Yeah. Uh, in such a situation of political churn, as you mentioned in your article as well, the involvement of the military and the role of external forces is also being intensely debated in Nepal. Do you think these stakeholders have had a stabilizing influence, or have they further added to the complexities?
Well, I think one view is that they have all added to the complexities,
Hmm.
and they may still have some sort of a stabilizing force. I mean, this is a contradiction in terms, but that's
Yes.
what it is. For instance, let me tell you that on 8th there was a Gen Z peaceful revolt, then people died, police killed people, and all that. Next day, burning of the properties and assets. But the army did not move next day to protect the national property.
Hmm.
Is a big question, and
Yes.
this has been raised to the army chief also. First,
Absolutely.
and he has no answer. He said if we would have come in, we would have killed more people. This is no answer, because when the army comes, maybe people must have got scared and where they have gone away. And
Hmm.
it was whatever it is, it was their responsibility to protect these assets
Hmm.
which are of national value and the private property. I mean, Hilton Hotel was burnt, so
Right.
there is no excuse for the army. Firstly, this is the allegation against the army chief. Second allegation against the army chief is that he brought on the board in negotiations for the interim government, regarding your previous question,
Hmm.
even the royalists, which were not a part of Gen Z. And
Hmm.
it is the Gen Z which has been opposing the royalists all along. And when
Right.
it was brought, I think some of the Gen Z groups told the army chief that do you want to bring the king back, or you
Hmm.
want to stage a coup and take power for yourself? So
Hmm.
these questions were raised very, very clearly. And there has been a lot of debate and discussion on the why army chief did whatever whatever he did, and his explanations have not been fully persuasive. They have not been accepted by and large the people. So army has a role. An army is a royal army until 2006.
Yeah.
So people say that the monarchy may have a strong constituency within the army, and they might have done something to facilitate it. And second is the role of external powers, particularly of the US,
Hmm.
because the some of the Gen Z groups have been seen to be linked to the US. Not only that, I think some allegations are that the new interim government has almost 80% of the people who are in one way or the other linked to the US NGOs, and they had worked for the US. So there are reflections cast on them because the Soros group probably was working there. The National Endowment for Democracy was involved there. USAID was involved there. These groups are being funded by Coca-Cola and by various other organizations. I mean, it's a matter of details. We can't go here. So this is a reason that people suspect that US might have had a role, largely because of the fact that Mr. Oli's government was considered to be a pro-China government.
Hmm.
And they wanted this pro-China government to go because under Oli, a lot of Chinese influence has come into Nepal, and obviously the Americans would not want it. Obviously, Indians would also not want it this way. So they say might be India, and there are some sections, perhaps those related to the RSS, who are
Hmm.
interested in bringing monarchy back.
Yeah.
Therefore, many Nepalese suspect that India indirectly wanted to bring monarchy back by demolishing the republican system because India has not yet approved the 2015 constitution. And Nepalese take an exception to that. It is not necessary for India to endorse every constitution in the world, but Nepal is a close friend and in a different context. So the fingers are being raised towards the US and India,
Hmm.
but India certainly would want to stabilize this situation because, as you asked, if they have stakes, and America should be interested in establishing democracy in Nepal, not
Okay.
allowing any other system. Therefore, I said that, and the army eventually
Hmm.
it neglected for one day, but second day it came and brought about peace.
Yeah.
And in any revolt of this nature cannot be controlled except for the army.
Hmm.
Therefore, all the three have a stabilizing role also. Much depends upon how they perform this role.
Hmm. Um, Coming to the India and Nepal relations aspect a little more in detail, India remains to have strong stakes in Nepal's stability, democracy, and economic development. But what can India do to offer support in the country's political transition while ensuring that it is not perceived as the dominating big brother, which has been the case in the past?
Well, Big Brother is a Western term. I don't normally favor it. It is actually the elder brother. It should be, because an elder brother scolds you when you do something wrong, but he also helps you when you are in a trouble. The big brother doesn't only scolds you and it only disciplines you. So the big
Fair.
brother is a Western American concept. I think we must use elder brother so far as India is concerned. And why I say that? Because in all Nepal's transitions and transformations
Yeah.
which have taken place so far, from 1951 onwards, when Rana system was thrown away and a monarchy was restored, republican system was brought in,
Mhm.
India has played a transformational role in Nepal.
Absolutely.
Every change, there is no major change in Nepal which has taken place without India's decisive role.
Right.
Therefore, India has a role in ensuring
Hmm.
that Nepal retains its democracy and republican system,
Mhm.
and a system which caters to the aspirations of all the sections of the people. And there are a lot of diversification in the Nepali society. There are a lot of divisions in the Nepali society, and India can play the role there, which it should play the role. And secondly, now India must ensure that monarchy doesn't come back. I
Hmm.
have a feeling that monarchy cannot come back,
Hmm.
largely because all the old political parties are not prepared to accept monarchy
Right.
because the experience of monarchy has not been very great. In
Hmm.
fact, monarchy has a very gloomy history, and again,
Right.
this is not the time to go into that. Therefore, we must make sure.
Hmm.
Why I am saying that, because some of these sections of the ruling establishment in India may
Hmm.
want monarchy to come back.
Yes.
Terms of the RSS, which is wanting Hindutva to come. that Nepal to become a Hindu state, and
Hmm.
Hindu state is associated with the monarchy because Nepal's constitution for the first time was changed to make it a Hindu state only in 1960, when
Right.
King Mahendra had thrown the democracy government out and wanted to have his own credibility, which
Hmm.
was being challenged and questioned by many others. And because of that challenge to the credibility, King Mahendra brought in this Hindu state concept
Hmm.
because in a Hindu state, the king is considered to be an avatar, a reincarnation of Lord Vishnu,
Hmm.
and you cannot challenge Lord Vishnu. So
Hmm.
his idea was to get greater legitimacy for the monarch.
Ah,
And anyone who talks about a Hindu state also essentially talks about monarchy to come back.
right.
This is
But,
where the problem is in Nepal. And I think India has to be very, very cautious not to
hmm.
get into it.
but
And
this
yeah,
but this demand, sir, I think remains confined to a very small section of Nepalis and Indian society, right? It's
there is a party which is a pro monarchy party.
hmm.
That party has some seats in the parliament.
Right.
It has about 3 to 4% of the voting strength.
Hmm.
Now, in 30 million people,
Hmm.
even 3 to 4 million, 4% of the voting strength is enough for the street strength. So, monarchy has been making demonstrations all around in the last few months or 1 or 2 years, cashing upon and exploiting the weaknesses of the democratic system. And because of those protests, there are demonstrations, there are motorcycle people on the Nepali streets. And in a country, in any South Asian country, it is not difficult to gather a couple of lakhs of the people on the street
Hmm.
if you have a support.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it shows the muscle towards its street power, street strength. But that's not the real strength for monarchy. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of confusion or a lot of persuasion when people see all these demonstrations. They say, "Oh, then monarchy has a lot of support in Nepal," which
Hmm.
is not. Because if Nepalese people wanted monarchy, they
Hmm.
must have voted for the pro monarchy party to come to power,
Absolutely.
which
Yes.
they have not. Therefore, I have a feeling that this is not there. And India is also sometimes often accused of many, micromanaging Nepali political system and interfering in, which I think in the last couple of years, India has restrained itself and demonstrated that it is not going to interfere. So
Hmm.
India has a great role. It can help in the elections. It has always been helping Nepal's elections by
Hmm.
providing jeeps or voting machines or whatever else support, technical support, training of the election commission people, so on and so forth. So
Hmm.
India must ensure that a peaceful, fair, and free election takes place in Nepal, and the republican system is restored,
Hmm.
which becomes more efficient and which governs better, which gives good governance rather than corruption and all that. But
Yeah.
that's a big question. I mean, this is what one can say, but
Hmm.
let's see how politics evolves there.
Definitely, I think India has a very complex and tough
Yes,
task
of course.
ahead.
It's a challenging task when all the neighborhood is disturbed today. In
Absolutely.
Bangladesh, you see Sri Lanka, you see Myanmar,
Hmm.
even Maldives had gone in a different way, which we have able to bring it back and all that.
Absolutely, and I think there's also some similarities that some of these movements share that you've mentioned
Yes,
elsewhere
there
as
are. There are. In
well.
fact, I also repeatedly say that it is time for the Modi government to sit
Hmm.
down and revise and revisit its neighborhood first policy.
Right, right. Because the demands of the
Because the
neighborhood
neighborhood
themselves
changing and India is not respected everywhere.
absolutely. While the upcoming elections are definitely a step forward for Nepal's democracy, what are some of the lessons to be learned from the past for the country to bolster its democratic institutions further?
Well, one is that similar leadership should not rotate itself. So you have to make some constitutional changes. For instance, you can bring a constitutional changes that no person can become a prime minister more than two times or something like that. There is a possibility to do that, which should be done so that these unethical alliances do not take place,
Hmm.
and the kind of circulation of the elite takes place. There is a new leadership. There is a secondly, I think there can also be governmental or constitutional provisions to make that the corruption doesn't take place. For instance, 2 days back, the Nepal Prime Minister had said that it is not enough to increase the punishment for the corrupt people, but
Right.
to ensure that corruption doesn't take place initially.
Hmm.
So you have to kill the corruption at the grassroots level. Now,
Right.
how do you do that? You have to find out political means and some mechanism in which you catch up, and then there should be accountability, which has never ever been there,
Hmm.
because there are so many cases, so many examples of corruptions at a very high level,
Hmm.
at the prime minister's level, at the minister's level, and
Hmm.
some of the ministers have been exposed. They have even been thrown out, but nothing, no major action has been taken place. Crores and crores of rupees are being, laundered here and there. So
Hmm.
this is the kind of a situation, and unless this happens, unless the polity is ordered and disciplined, I think the democracy cannot survive there. That's where the problem is. The credibility of democracy will go. Secondly, they have to improve their economy.
Hmm.
Make sure that the aspirations of the young people, 42.5%, almost half of the country,
Yes.
you can't neglect them. You cannot ignore them at all. And if they don't have economic opportunities, then the poverty would continue.
Hmm.
Therefore, unless economy improves, and Nepal has two very strong sectors. One
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
power, second is tourism.
Hmm.
And both of them are highly underdeveloped.
Yes.
So I think if they improve upon it, and then Nepal, I mean, there was a time when Nepalese were talking about making Nepal as Switzerland by having technological development,
Right.
in which you develop, in a sophisticated system, in an environment which is there, cold and all that, where you can develop, regenerate new technologies and have new applications of older technologies. This can be done, which has not been done because the governments there have not directed towards the welfare of the people and development of the country,
Hmm.
neither during monarchy's rule, nor unfortunately last to almost 20 years of the republican system. So unless these two fronts are improved, I
Hmm.
don't think democracy can be stable in Nepal.
Right. I think with that, we can call it a wrap to this particular conversation. Lots of invaluable insights discussed, and definitely now Nepal stands at a critical crossroad with hopes pinned on the upcoming elections to transform what was a turbulent uprising into a credible path forward towards democratic, renewable, and stability. A very, very warm thank you to all our guests who've patiently tuned in. We'd also like to take out a minute to request you to subscribe to EPW, support us on our social media channels. And again, a very, very warm thank you to Professor Muni for sharing his incredible insights. And we hope we can keep having such conversations to understand the nuances of Nepal's politics.